Hello, class. Today we will continue on with our lectures. That is, we will move on to the themes of the novel. The first theme that we will look at is the theme of personal relations. Forster's central concern as a novelist is the value of personal relations. This is in line with his liberalist ideologies and his liberalist leanings that informs his opinion or his worldview. And his liberalism brings about his passion for truth, tolerance, good temper, and sympathy in personal affairs. So, this is a very important aspect of E.M. Forster as an individual, and also the Bloomsbury Group as a group of intellectual people and creative people. So, they highly value liberalism, which also entailed that. Um, they entail that individuals matter more than groups or societies, and this can be seen in their their creed and their ideologies. Uh, in one book, in one critic says the liberalism, Forster states his commitment to that loose body of middle class opinion known as liberalism, which says that it is up to every man to choose his own friends, his own job, to arrive at his own convictions, etc. Forster is an advocate of reason, intelligence, culture, tolerance, and civilization against barbarity and provincialism. Accompanying these qualities is a fervent belief in individual freedom, an intense enthusiasm for the arts, and a passionate hatred of all forms of authoritarianism, including imperialism. So, this is what liberalism is all about, especially for the Victorian society. And he was an ardent believer in liberalism, and he highly values personal relations. And although we say that E.M. Forster values personal relations, which can be seen through his novels, it does not mean that he has an idealistic vision of personal relations, that communication is always possible between two individuals. Instead, he believes that yes, he knows that personal relationships are important. However, he is also aware and also highlights this in his novels, that personal relationships always break down with for some reason or the other. And so this novel, this particular novel, also deals with that aspect. Especially in the first part of the book. Let us try to analyze it in that light. We see the first part of the book, that is the mosque scene, as a central focus where personal relationships are being built between the English and the Indians. This is exemplified through Aziz and Mrs. Moore. Uh, the mosque scene represents a belief in the oneness of India and the possibility of understanding amongst people, exemplified through the relationship between Aziz and Mrs. Moore. So, how we've talked about in the previous classes as well, is that these two human beings are completely different. They are different racially. They are different in gender. They are One is young, the other is old. So they are, and their temperaments, their characters are completely different. Mrs. Moore is already ripe with age. She is wise. She is kind-hearted. She is humble. She is understanding. um, I'm not saying that Aziz is not all of those things, but Aziz is, he hasn't matured completely as yet. He is spontaneous. He is youthful. He is very prone to his mood swings. He will be one minute he will be uh, elated with joy at the British, and the next minute he will be very hurt at the way they treat him. And so he is very prone to mood swings, and he's also very temperamental. And so these two people come together. Mrs. Moore comes to the mosque to seek peace and relief from the boring uh, this boring society and the boring play that they are watching at the English club. And Aziz has been snubbed by the two English women, and he has come to the mosque to see peace and relief as well. And so these two people come to the mosque to seek some kind of solace, comfort for that can be that was provided by the quiet and the the peaceful atmosphere of the within the mosque. And with that, they immediately formed a bond. Because Mrs. Moore understood, because of her kind-heartedness and her understanding, she understands that even though the Muslim God is not her God, she understands that God is there in the mosque, and so she appreciates that she has an appreciation for a different culture and a different religion, and that brings her close with Aziz, and so they form a bond, and which lasted till the end of the novel, and that is. And it seems like if you read just the part one of the book, it seems like your human relationships have triumphed, but that is not so. The next relationship that we will analyze will bring this to light. This is the relationship between Aziz and Fielding, and it shows how goodwill, culture, and intelligence, in the words of Mr. Fielding, will bridge the gap between uh, people of very different temperaments and opinion. And we see that Aziz says the world is a globe of men who are trying to reach one another and can best do so with the help of goodwill plus culture and intelligence. He believes that goodwill plus a little culture and intelligence is needed for communications to be successful, for relationships to become successful. And that is Mr. Fielding's belief. And initially, when Mr. Fielding does not have any race consciousness like his other British compatriots have, instead, he is very understanding and kind towards Aziz and to the Indians as well. He does not completely side with the English. He's even among the English society, he's the odd man out. And he doesn't completely side with the Indians either. He's a person in the middle. He's sensitive to all these issues and he understands what the situation is within India. However, uh, he, we see that they form an immediate bond when Mr. Fielding invites Aziz into his house. Uh, because of Aziz's spontaneity and because of the kindness of Fielding, these two people can share a bond which lasts very long, even after the trial. Even when Aziz was accused of raping Adela Quested, Aziz was on his side, and I mean, Mr. Fielding was on Aziz's side, uh, and he wholeheartedly believed that Aziz would never do something like that, and he was on Aziz's side all along. And however, we see that uh, they differ on matters of women. When we see the relationship between them deteriorating after Mr. Fielding asked Aziz not to fine Miss Quested for the damages caused to his reputation, and so they part ways. Fundamentally, and so the fundamental differences of background and values come in the way of a successful relationship. Um, so it is these two are also two completely different human beings. We see that Mr. Fielding is a mature, sensible, rational, and a person who travels light. We see that the author describes him as he is an intellectual who travels light. He doesn't set down his roots in any place. He Meaning that even when he comes to India, he doesn't set down his roots with the Indians or with the English or even in the Indian soil. He always travels light. He's always on the move. And while Aziz is a person, he is placed in society, he is placed in religion, that is in the Muslim religion. And so their backgrounds are different, their races are different, their beliefs, their characters are different. And so we see that All these things come in the way of a successful relationship. And one particular quote that is very important is, what is the use of personal relations if one brings less and less to them? You can imagine, right? Even in your relationships with your friends, it would, as you grow older, it is much more difficult to form meaningful relationships. When we were young, we easily made friends. Most of us, we easily socialized with everybody else. But as you grow older, it becomes very difficult to form meaningful and lasting friendships or any kind of relationships, whether it be familial or otherwise. So that is that is how the nature of human beings. And so what is the use of personal relations if one brings less and less to them, right? And the next relationship that we can find is the relationship between Fielding and Adela. When I talk about relationship, I don't mean that boyfriend and girlfriend relationship. It's just a natural relationship between two individuals. Fielding and Adela exemplify the limitations of the search to form deeper, more permanent relations, to surrender to anything outside the self. So they, they understand each other on a very rational level. They are both from the same background, they have the same values, and but they do not have that emotional connection. So they cannot form a more deeper or a more permanent relation due to their and they cannot surrender anything outside from themselves. So and that is why their relationship becomes very superficial. They are decent, although they are decent and honest people, sensitive, sensible, honest, even subtle, but they are unable to come to terms with the unseen. This unseen is something that is outside the self, that is not of the immediate environment or the immediate reality that we as human beings experience. It is not the experience of ourselves, our mental or our cognitive experiences, but rather it is something that is incomprehensible to human beings, like the Marabar caves, the echoes in the Marabar caves, right? The universe is so vast, and all the sounds made within the caves are reduced to the same boom sound. So whether you are crying or whether you are laughing or whether you are just cutting your nails inside the cave, it will have that same echo. So all human endeavors at civilization, all human endeavors at forming personal relations and having meaningful bonds between human beings is reduced to nothing. Is what uh, they are left with after the Mirabar scene. And so they are they are unable to come to terms with that aspect of how do I say um, aspect of reality that they do not immediately understand. So that is that is something incomprehensible even to us, right? If you just imagine that you are inside that Mirabar cave and all the sound that you made had that same echo. All your endeavors at at studying or achievement or your goals are reduced to that same booming sound. What is the point of human existence? What is the point of civilization itself, right? And so they cannot understand that, they cannot grasp that. And so their relationship is very superficial, and they are themselves in a way superficial compared to, say, Professor Godbole. Professor Godbole is the epitome of the the person who understands that. And the way that Forster presents Godbole in the Hindu religion is in such a way that they become uh, the Hindu religion, and the Hindus are represented in such a way that they encompass all reality, even things that seem that seem silly, like praying to an idol, for example, is seems silly, or worshiping an idol and throwing the idol back into the water, it seems silly. Or um, viewing all creation, whether they are wasps, whether they are ants, or whether they are angels or cows, as having the same are as having the same entities and having the same equality in the sight of God, that is something that is very alien to especially the Christian worldview, because we Christians believe that we were created superior, right? Human beings were created superior, that all the other things, all the other animals and all the other things, living things, are beneath our feet. That is what we were taught in Genesis, right? But the Hindus don't believe that. They believe that everything will be there in heaven, right? Everything, all things, even stones, even rocks, will will be important, and that we have the same or an equal worth in the eyes of God. And so that is something that uh, as Adela and Fielding cannot understand. And so because of that, the relationship becomes very superficial, and they are, in the words of the Forster, they are like dwarves shaking hands. So we see that even though the beginning of the novel seems like um, a very straightforward progressive novel where uh, personal relationships will be built, and that people will, live along happily, and that understanding between two races or two cultures will come, or between two individuals will come eventually. But that is not the case. The Marabar Caves, the second part of the book, completely destroys all notions of um, solidarity, all notions of understanding, because when Mrs. Moore was infected, how do I say, was affected by that echo, she loses all interest in human life. She becomes completely indifferent to the world. She becomes indifferent to her children, because in the end, if existence itself means nothing, then having children means nothing, right? Even writing to her children, she didn't even want to write to her children, because it's so meaningless and it's so fruitless, because it's nothing in her opinion. So she has become completely apathetic and indifferent to existence, to life, right? And even though she believed that Aziz did not assault Adela quested, she did not even bother to stand for him. And in fact, she immediately went back she tried to go back to England even before Aziz's trial. And so that is, the relationships break down. And when when human beings are placed on, when two very different human beings, both in terms of background and values, are, you know, uh, face problems, then it seems like it cannot be solved, according to the novel. Because even at the end of the book, Aziz and Mr. Fielding do not actually, um, they do not actually completely heal that gap, that that breaking of the bond. Even though they try to become friends again, we know that their life has been completely different. Their ways of life and um, they themselves have become so different that to achieve that kind of deep bond that they previously shared is now impossible, right? So that is the whole substance, the whole, that is what the theme of personal relations encompasses. However, I want to point out also that this can mean, why do personal relationships become complicated? Why does it break down? Because there can be so many reasons, like we see that, race becomes one reason. And so when I'm talking about personal relationships, so many things can come under it. Even racial discrimination can come under it. Even um, differences in character and values can come under it. So this is just a broad theme, and this can be divided into so many sub themes, or even the theme of racism can be taken apart for another, altogether an umbrella theme. So you have to be sure of that when your exams come. If at all a question like that comes, I hope you will be able to answer it. And so with that, we will end with this lecture. We will hopefully try and upload more lectures in the for more days to come. Thank you.